Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody to this really special event held by L&D Shakers. Many of you I know are already members of L&D Shakers, but for those who don't know, it's a free professional membership community for L&D leaders. Anyone who's in this space, you could be a talent, HR, OD professional, but loosely, we come together. It's a free community putting on lots of resources. We help each other. Founded by the awesome Anna Maria Dogo. Many of you I know will know her as well. She was patient zero and is the founding member of L&D Shakers. I then help. L&D Shakers has a lot of learning clusters, and one of them is L&D Means Business, which I help put together. And it is to help transform us from not just being learning specialists, but also business leaders alongside. And within that, we've had lots of fireside chats. I will put a link in a second to L&D Means Business, where you can sign up to the blog and so on, and access to the sort of latest events that are coming up. But without further ado, it's a real privilege to have our special guest, Dr. Keith Keating. I'm only going to say a few words because his reputation precedes him. But those of you who have read The Trusted Learning Advisor massively shaped the way we operate as L&D professionals, hugely. I still have phrases and quotes that I keep in my head to this day. And of course, we're here today to meet the man himself and have a live discussion because it was quite timely because of the release of his new book, Hidden Value. And I can tell you, I've got lots of notes, about 20 pages worth. And we're going to unpick, we're going to get personal. We're going to look at real impact of L&D. What does it mean for our role? We're going to hear some stories, hopefully, from Keith as well, and what inspired him behind the book, and how you can unlock hidden value and translate and articulate the great work that we do. Keith, thanks for joining. How are you feeling today?
My pleasure. I'm excited to return. I love the Shakers.
Awesome, awesome. But we're really excited to sort of dive in and hear a little bit more about some of your experiences. So, hidden value. It's got a lot packed in here, and I've gone through each page. There is a really great diamond analogy
It's
that
funny.
you
I feel like you know it better than me now.
I mean, I kept going back to it because, I mean, in there is a lesson about storytelling, which is and metaphors and analogies. But I would love to hear a bit about what that diamond analogy is and what was the inspiration behind that, and in fact, writing the book.
So the diamond analogy came from a simple truth when you think about diamonds, and that's that they don't start out brilliant. They begin rough and they're buried and they're overlooked and people are hunting for them. You know, it's just like the value of L&D in many organizations. For diamonds, it's when pressure is applied that those right facets are revealed, and that's when a diamond's true brilliance becomes visible. And so, as I was thinking about analogies and metaphors, to me, that's how we operate largely. We're doing essential transformational work, but it often goes unseen, or it's underestimated, or it's misjudged, or it's hidden. And hidden value is my attempt to hold that diamond in the light and to help us uncover, refine, articulate that value that we've been creating so that others can see it. I like that you picked up on that analogy because it basically was one of the first thoughts in thinking about this book. But I'll say that my desire to write it goes a lot deeper than that. And it said, I believe that we're standing at a crossroads, not just as learning and development practitioners, but as workforce, as workers. I believe that we're evolving from what we've historically called a knowledge economy into something very different. So historically, it was about the knowledge that we have. How do we apply that knowledge? This device now has more knowledge than at least me that I will ever have available to me. So we have tools that are more knowledgeable than us, maybe not smarter, maybe not wiser, but definitely more knowledge. So the question now is, how do we take our expertise as workers, our knowledge, our experience, and combine it with these tools so that we can ultimately create value. And that's why I believe that we're moving from a knowledge economy into a value economy. And this is going to be our new currency because all of us have access, or majority of us have access to these tools now. And so, how are we going to use these tools to create more value? And this isn't just for us in L&D. Every worker should be asking themselves the same question. What value am I creating? What value am I bringing to the business? Because organizations exist to create value. And all of us should be thinking like value creators, value seekers. So I wrote it to give us, specifically in talent development, L&D, a language or tools or a framework to help us uncover value on our own terms. And I would say that the ultimate reason, so that's what the book is about, but my goal and my hope for anybody who reads it is that this helps you fall in love with what we do or fall back in love with what we do. Because I think a number of us are feeling pretty burnt out from the amount of years that we've been held back. We've been treated like order takers. We've been put into silos. We've had to constantly fight for our existence. And I want us to get over that because we have value. That's why I wrote the book.
That's so great to unpack your thinking behind it. And you mentioned, connected to that is there's lots of change, as you say, that's happening, and we've got to sort of navigate that. Early on in the book, on page 17, you talk a little bit about, there's a great quote that L&D transforms uncertainty into opportunity, and that L&D are architects of possibility and transformation. And I wanted to get your take on, given where the profession has gone and is going, how well do you think we as an L&D community, talent development community, deal with uncertainty?
It's a good question. First of all, great call out on the quote. That's one of my favorite quotes for us is that we are architects of possibility and transformation. That's what we do. We help our organizations transform. We'll come back to that a little bit later. I think one of our greatest potential value propositions is helping our organizations deal with uncertainty, change, disruption, transformation. I mean, if you think back to COVID, we were put on this pedestal almost overnight because all of a sudden there was so much transformation moving. We had to jump to the Zoom environment, digital environment, and we were needed. We were needed to help train on how to work in this new environment. When we help our organizations deal with uncertainty, it elevates us. And we do that by helping our talent be agile, adaptable, resilient, all these buzzwords. And we create cultures of lifelong learning. But here's the part that we don't talk about enough. That work starts with us first. We can't be so busy focusing on making everybody else deal with uncertainty and change successfully until we start to deal with it ourselves. We have to model it. We can't talk about adaptability if we're not clinging to it. If we're so busy clinging to what we're comfortable doing, we're not demonstrating it. So I think to answer your question specifically, as a field, I think we struggle with uncertainty. I think that we generally get stuck. We wait for clarity instead of creating it. So I'm going to repeat that again. We wait for clarity instead of creating it. And AI is a perfect example. I know way too many L&D practitioners right now who are still afraid of AI, who are afraid of AI replacing them instead of proactively leaning in and asking, how can this make me more impactful? How can this make me more valuable? How can this make me better? How can my business partners learn from this? How can I show up to them as somebody who's using this to help them? So in a world that is changing and will constantly be changing, whether we're ready or not, our role is ultimately to fight uncertainty in a way that we help people thrive in it. But we can't do that if we're busy standing in the past. So when we think about the fact that we're architects of transformation, we have to first transform ourselves.
Powerful, powerful. Got to transform ourselves. And you said something a little bit about how we can get a little bit stuck and we maybe wait for clarity. That resonated with me so well because many years ago I used to, what I would describe have a linear way of thinking about things. I'm going to be invited to a meeting, and they're going to ask me my opinion. I'm going to prepare a proposal, go away, and I'm going to share it with somebody in the C-suite. They're going to give me feedback, and then they're going to give me budget. And unfortunately, things just don't move like that. And I've had to sort of really be a lot more agile in the way that I prepare things. And I think you really have helped clarify that for me as well. I'm sure for other colleagues. And building on that, there's also again such a powerful reminder in what you say in the book about fostering what you call our brand promise. So as we build on what you said, we're about transformation and architects and things like that. You talk about brand promise. Again, it's on page 188. For those of you who have the book and who are still reading it or who are going to buy the book, it's on page 188, our brand promise. Share with us what you mean by that, by brand promise.
I want to just touch back with what you were sharing in terms of that linear mindset first. I would encapsulate it by saying it's the difference between being reactive and proactive. Sitting back and waiting for that order to come in, waiting for the invitation to arrive to allow you to speak. That's part of our transformation is we have to get over that. And we have to, the phrase that I use is we have to build our own table and invite others to come and sit with us rather than trying to get a seat at someone else's table. When we have that mindset, it's giving them the power. It's basically positioning that I need to get into that room before I can have a voice or a point of view or a perspective. My argument is reframe that mindset, build your own table and invite others to come and sit with you. And if we have time, I can drill down into that more a little bit later, but to specifically answer your question about the brand promise, this is important because whether we like it or not, every function in an organization has a brand. Doesn't mean it has a good brand, but it has a brand. If I said, think about your IT function, what kind of service do they provide to you? Is it valuable? Is it not valuable? We all have a brand, but it's up to us to create the brand. And another way to think about it is, what do people say about you when you're not there? What do they say about the learning and development function? Because what they say, that is your brand, whether you like it or not. So we have to build a brand, not on just what we say, but what we constantly deliver. So for me, our brand promise at BDO is that we will help people grow so the organization can grow. Grow your people, grow your business. And please feel free to take the brand promise, use it for yourself, because we're in the business of transformation. Our ultimate goal is to unlock human potential, to build future-ready capabilities. I can give you all these marketing buzzwords, but ultimately that's we serve our people. We serve our people to help them be able to do their job successfully today and prepare them for tomorrow. But the catch is, if the perception of L&D is that we're slow, we're reactive, we're disconnected, we're just training, we're just compliance, we're just e-learning, if that's the perception, even if it's not true, that becomes our brand. And if we're not intentionally shaping our brand, someone else is shaping it for us because someone else is talking about us and they're now telling somebody else and they're now telling somebody else. So we have to take control over our brand, create a brand promise. It means that we're aligning what we do with what we say and how we show up. It means that we're delivering value that's visible, that's measurable, that's meaningful. We have to treat our function like a product because it is a product. We need a value proposition. We need a strong reputation. We have to build a brand that people trust. And this takes time. It takes time. In the book, I put a case study. It's about 18 pages long about everything that we've done at BDO, where when I joined, there was I was about to say there was no brand, but that would contradict me. So there was a brand, but the brand was that basically it was a training function that creates e-learning. And so we've had to rebuild that brand, and our entire journey is mapped out in there. So ultimately, uh, to recap, the brand isn't defined by it is not defined by our intentions. It's defined by our impact. Again, easy way to summarize it if you're thinking about what do you mean by that? What are people saying about you when you're not there?
Mm. And I think that is such a good way of looking at it because, we're seeing, as you said, reactive and the training people. One of the cool little tricks, and I think sometimes these things aren't big, grand things, gestures. We need to try and do some of the quick wins, fast tips as well. One of the great things I did, my role was head of learning, and in brackets on my signature, I just put change management.
Mm.
I didn't ask for permission from my CEO. I just put change management. And then every time my CEO used to introduce as me, even though I was on the C-suite, when I was just in learning, he used to introduce me and say, "Yeah, and Saadi takes care of all of our training and compliance and that stuff." And so when before he in the next meeting, before he could introduce me, I said, "Hey, I'm Saad, and I help the business grow, and we take care of chain management programs through learning solutions."
I
And,
love that
and it's
because
a
you
quick
took
win.
control over the narrative. And that's what we have to do. I'm doing the exact same thing right now at BDO, and I'm silently, unapologetically, and not asking for permission, I'm rebranding us to talent development. Because ultimately that's what we do. We are developing talent from the moment that they join or even before they join until they're alumni after they've already left. We're creating alumni programs to help people who have left grow and develop. And I was in a meeting, gosh, about 3 or 4 months ago. It was a big executive meeting. And someone said, okay, now Keith from training is coming up. And so I stayed seated. And they all turned to look at me. And I said, I guess we're all waiting for Keith from training, but that's not me. I'm Keith from talent development. So then everybody laughed. And it was a funny but polite way to also reframe that narrative. And there's another example of this is in a different meeting, someone said, okay, we're going to hear from Keith about one of the training initiatives. And I stood up and I said, just so we're clear, this is not a training initiative. This is a cultural initiative because we're moving to a business development culture. I said, every one of you owns this, not me. My team, we're just pulling the trigger on this to help execute it. But this is not my program. This is not my culture initiative. All of us in this room take ownership. So I love that you started off with that you're adding it in your title as well and correcting people. Those are just some subtle, low barrier to entry ways that we start to change that narrative.
Yeah, it's such a cool way. I love what you did. You did classic behavior change. You just said, "Well, where is Keith?" That's such a powerful moment to get it into their minds, and I think that's influence as well, which I think sometimes we can struggle with. We aren't we rather be behind the scenes sometimes as L&D professionals. We like to give more than we take. We like to help and not take any credit. And therefore, trying to influence and use these soft power tactics sometimes it makes me feel a bit inauthentic and I'm just putting myself out there a bit too much. But actually, if we really want to step up as leaders, and we have to, it's not a choice anymore. I think we're going to have to feel more and more comfortable, and it starts with the baby steps, like you and I are doing. I want to carry on that thread, and you talked about value earlier. We've talked about impact, and later on we'll talk a little bit about the levels of value because you really give a good practical way of thinking about value, not be extending that term beyond just that single word. But I really love the way you peppered in and you were really honest about the experiences that you had as well coming up in your career. And there was one L&D initiative that you said generated $3 million in savings. Yet it wasn't, hailed or heralded as a success by the C-suite as you thought it would. If you're able to, could you share a bit more about that experience or another one and what you learned from that experience?
It was probably one of the most defining or memorable moments because it's continued to follow me throughout my career and was also a big aha moment. So the context is it's a Fortune 500 company I was working for, and we had finished an initiative, and there was about a $3 million cost savings that we were able to uncover. And I was so excited afterwards, and the team's excited. And I was saying to my leader, okay, here's the story about this. We got to figure out how do we get this out there so others can celebrate this value proposition that we're creating. And he said, you can take the team to lunch and you can celebrate internally here in your silo, but do not tell anybody about this. Because if you do, then finance is going to reduce our budget. And then they're also going to expect us to be able to re-deliver this on a consistent basis. So do not tell anybody about this. It was a bit heartbreaking, a bit deflating, because it was, again, one of those moments where it's like, stay in your box. And I was a bit stunned. I still get a little bit emotional about it because we had just proven all of this value. And instead of celebrating, we're basically told to bury it. And so it felt backwards, but it also lit a bit of a fire in me because at that same time, I started to explore this question more. Why is learning so misunderstood? Why is our value feared instead of being embraced? And about a year and a half later, I started my doctoral program, and I needed to be thinking about a research topic. And I just kept coming back to, why was I not allowed to tell specifically the finance about this function or the CFO about this function? And then I explored it and it was like, well, actually, we've always been afraid of finance. I feel like we've always been taught to fear them because they're the ones that cut our budget. And so it stuck with me and it became my research topic. And in my process of researching existing literature, I actually found literature dating back to the 1950s from the original ATD that was also saying the same message, to essentially fear finance because they cut the budget. And so that became my doctoral research topic. And so it's free, it's out there. If you're interested in reviewing that, we can dissect that another time. But long story short, it helped me uncover that I have operated in a silo. It was, you have HR, you have finance, you have L&D, you have IT. And in part of my research, because what my research was, I wanted to identify and uncover, what do CFOs actually think about us? What value do they see that we have, or do they see we have value? And do they cut our budget? Are they intentionally targeting us? And a short anecdote is no. According to my research and Fortune 500 CEOs, they are not specifically targeting us. In some ways, they don't even think about us. And the reason is our budget is typically hidden or buried in something else. Rarely does L&D have a specific budget line item that comes from finance. And it all depends on, is your budget centralized, decentralized, hybrid? Are you part of HR? So is your budget really HR's budget? Are you part of the business units? And so the CFOs would say largely, like, yes, we cut budgets, but we don't specifically say, L&D, your budget is cut. We'll say, hey, you need 10% across the line, or HR, you've got to cut 15%. How those service lines make their decisions is up to them, but they couldn't even tell me what the learning budget was for any of these organizations, which is interesting in itself. So long story short, this has stuck with me, and the fact that we have to do a better job of partnering with other service lines, other stakeholders, other business partners, especially finance, because we tend to create our own numbers, like with ROI. And I was asking them, and we have these Excel spreadsheets, and they would interrupt me and say, stop sending me your Excel spreadsheets. That data does not translate to how we look at value. And then my next thought was, oh, well, I guess we could have just asked you, how do you quantify and qualify value? Because that should influence us. So long story short, it stayed with me to help me realize that we've got to get outside of our box and our silo. And particularly, finance is not to be feared. Build a relationship with finance so that you can understand, how do they calculate this so that we can follow their calculations.
I mean, but the fact that it was career defining for you, and I think Leslie puts in the chat that that moment you turned resilience into a moment of empowerment, and you talked about leaving, getting out of our silos. I mean, I was so frustrated with how L&D was seen and how I was being seen. I just left learning altogether, went entirely into a commercial role, revenue growth, etc. Now I can understand a P&L better than an accountant. And I'll come back in, now I'll come back into learning, and I do a bit of both, which is why I'm so passionate about this particular project and doing this together. I mean, not everyone can wants to do that and go out, but I would certainly recommend it. On the scale of extremities, it's probably somewhere on the latter end. But the other thing that you can do, which I'm going to put in the chat, because in Shakers we create a lot of free resources. The other quick soft tip that I would give is I would create two versions of my L&D strategy, which now I think about it, why wasn't I doing that? One for my CFO, CEO, which was more strategic commercial, I want a bit more learning focus for my HRBPs or people business partners or whatever for things that they would understand. And it was such an interesting trick to do. And I realized I wasn't speaking enough and tailoring my message to the different audiences. And what you talk about is really what does the CFO want? How do they see us? So I'm going to put into the chat where you can download two sample strategies, one which is more commercial and the same one in the learning language. So I'll put that there. But
One quick
yeah,
note on
yeah,
that
carry on. Yeah.
is I would add to, as you're thinking about your strategy, start first with figuring out what does your business need. So as you think, we all have our annual strategy. We know as it gets towards October, it's time to think about the next year. I've been in this business for 25 years. I started when I was 5 years old, if you're doing the math. And I would say up until only about 5 years ago, did I ever think about the business partner in that aspect. We get to October, what do? The L&D team gets together and we set our strategy. Here's what we want to accomplish next year. But we're creating that in a silo. The first step should be stop, figure out what your businesses have put for their strategy for next year, because that's your strategy. We are not separate. Our job is to service them. So as you're thinking about the different stakeholders, also include them when you're creating your strategy, because they should absolutely be aligned. Normally we think of it, here's what I want to do, but it should be here's what they need us to do.
I love that, plugging into the sort of bigger picture. Within there, you talk a little bit about your own four Ps. Again, on page 55, for those who have the book or are going to be reading the book soon, which you say the four Ps, as you put them, help us unlock hidden value. And some of these areas will actually be new to L&D colleagues. So I was just wondering and hoping if you could tell us what they are and what do you think, do you have any tips around those four Ps?
Like I said, you know this better than I. So, okay, the four Ps, according to page 55, people, programs, processes, and partnerships. Give me a second. Okay, got it. So, people, programs, processes, and partnerships. And the reason that I position it this way, and this is when we're talking about being value seekers, because I think there's four components to value. There's value seeking, value creating, value measuring, and then telling the story of value. So there's value inherently that we're already creating that's out there, but sometimes it's hiding in the people. I'll give you an example of that. Confidence. If we've helped somebody build confidence to do their job successfully, or they've built up leadership skills to then apply for that next leadership role, or maybe they've been promoted and they don't have the skills to feel confident, but we've helped them feel confident, or we've helped retain somebody who was going to leave. That's our value in our people. That happens inherently with the programs that we deliver. So we look at people. Sometimes the value that's already there we should be seeking is in our program. So that's not just how many people completed the training, but how did that program help a team stretch or hit their target? Or how did a program help increase customer satisfaction scores? Then there's processes. Where are we creating value through efficiency? For example, are we streamlining the onboarding program? So we're reducing that time to work. Are we reducing rework or errors? Are we making it easier for people to find the right tools that they need? the right learning that they need to be able to do their job better, more efficient. And then the last P, partnerships. This goes back to our earlier conversation about the fact that we often think that we're siloed. And I view us as connectors, as integrators. We need to be embedded across all of the business units. It's one of our biggest value propositions. In fact, I don't really consider myself L&D. I don't like boxes. I don't like these job titles that limits. I would say about 50% of what I do has nothing to do with learning. It is about being a listener. It's about being a connector, a collaborator. Sometimes I spend hours a day just listening to my stakeholders complain about their challenges. It's not a learning function. I can't solve it with L&D. They're not calling me to give me an order. They're just calling me to have somebody listen to them who knows different parts of the business. Because I can listen to you for 30 minutes, complain about this, and then I can say, well, you know what? This service line is actually facing the exact same thing. And there's somebody who's trying to solve that problem over there. I would recommend connecting with them. Or I can say, you know what? I've got some people in my network who you could talk to that have faced something similar. Part of our role is bringing that networker, that relationship collaborator. And so we look at these partnerships that we need to be creating because we shouldn't be doing this in a silo amongst ourselves. So if I were to give you a tip, the 4 Ps is a great way to value audit. You could think about, where did we unlock people? What outcomes came out of this program? What processes have we improved? What partnerships, what partnerships are we growing? Because you'll be surprised how much value you're already sitting on. And you just haven't looked through the right kaleidoscope lens to make that come into full view.
I mean, you got such a great quote that probably comes as a result of being an author of such great books. The one of them that's going to stick with me, and I put it into the chat, is 50% of what you do, and I think it's the same for all of us, has nothing to do with learning. It's that, as you say, that listening, that pairing. I was listening to our sales and customer service team, sales bringing new customers, customer service deal with upsell to existing customers. And they didn't know how to deal with this fact that they want to onboard people quickly. So we would often talk about ramp time, which is great. But if you want to ramp someone up more quickly, if you've saved 3 or 4 weeks, I thought that's pretty cool. How do we quantify that into revenue terms? And we didn't came up with a metric. We call it account switching. And so what that means is the senior account manager can now hand off 2 of their accounts 4 weeks earlier to a new sort of junior account manager, and that will equate 4 weeks worth of revenue is why. And so that's how we just demonstrated very simply, nothing complex, how, and a lot of it is common sense, but when you have a bit of a logical mindset, sometimes it's easier to do. And I know that a lot of us also feel, I coach a lot of L&D leaders, and they say to me, but I don't decide the strategy, I don't decide these metrics. Can I talk about these metrics? Absolutely, like we are part of the team, even if we aren't the ones to come up with the strategy, we should feel comfortable enough to play around with it, if that makes sense
And
as well.
to have a point of view on it. Order takers don't have points of view. They're sitting back and they're passive. Trusted learning advisors, strategic business partners, we have points of view, even if it's something that we don't own.
Mm.
I'm trying to always insert myself into these other areas just to provide a point of view. And by the way, we all have access to ChatGPT. Okay, if you're locked down at work, you have your own mobile device where you can use it. It makes us so much more efficient, effective. It can help us translate what we do into the language of the business
Mm.
almost immediately. And so if you're looking to establish a point of view, and if you're younger in your career, earlier in your career, and you're thinking, well, I don't have enough experience yet, you've got a great coach that's available to you 24 hours a day that has all of that historical knowledge that can help you establish a point of view.
I like that. Not feeling like, again, you have to make a grand strategic recommendation, but a viewpoint. Here's what I believe and here's why. And use it as a way to kickstart a bit of a
And bring
conversation.
in research.
Yeah.
Spend a little time bringing in research. I love when almost without fail, if I have a stakeholder that doesn't want to listen to me. And by the way, very rarely will I use the phrase, well, I think, I feel. I try to keep Keith out of the conversation.
Okay.
But when I go to a stakeholder and I say, the World Economic Forum says this, also McKinsey backs it up with this, and Deloitte had some research about this, no one argues back with me. If by chance they do, then I have sometimes gone as far as pulling in somebody from my LinkedIn network. And I love pulling in competitors. Like, I'm in a professional service firm. Typically, I hear and I see other people talking about our competitor, our competitor. I love McKinsey, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, because we're all playing in the same sandbox. And some of us are doing things better than one another. So I make an effort to go out and befriend them so that we can share best practices. And one of the things that I am bold enough to do is I'll bring one of them in when I see that there's a need to have a conversation to help my stakeholder realize that maybe this point of view that they're thinking isn't necessarily the best point of view. And here's somebody who's done it. They've done it successfully. So come in and talk about it. So don't be afraid of your competitors.
Yeah, I like that. And you're already starting to speak that language then as a result of what they would like to hear. So before we open up to Q&A, one final reflection if we could. And thanks so much. This has been so eye-opening. Chapter 8, and I'll let you find it. On page 22 onwards in chapter 8, there's so many useful and actionable tips. Just, just a barrage of them. And if you had to pick one, and I know it's going to be hard, if you had to pick one of these tips, what would be your most favorite?
So this chapter is about amplifying our value. So I suppose the tip that I would share is empower others to carry your message forward. It's not just about us trying to be the ones talking about it. Like I shared just a moment ago, I want to keep myself out of it because I don't want people to then respond, well, yeah, you're in learning, so of course you would say this. So again, I'm thinking 2 steps ahead of how they're going to argue with me. So that's where I try to bring in data and research. But for this, we spend a lot of time trying to convince people of our value. The real traction happens when others do that for us. So I'll give you an example of this. I started this program at BDO, and it is called Speak with Impact. If I had gone in and asked for permission about this, I would have had a lot of layers to go through to get approvals and all this other stuff. People would want to sign off. And I was like, you know what? I'm new here. I know this is needed. I've been told this is needed. I can see it's needed. And the program is a 2 half-day coaching program on speaking with impact, gravitas, not using disfluencies, being able to talk to clients and such. And so I put together a program and I ran it for 6 people off the side, quietly. Those 6 people found it so powerful, they went and told their 6 friends. Their 6 friends reached out and said, hey, I heard that you did this for so-and-so. Can you run the program for me? Sure, happy to run it for them. They went out, they told somebody else. Long story short, I've never advertised for this, and we have a waiting list of 200 partners. So for the next year and a half, it's already sold out, and we've never said a word about this because they've carried that message forward of the value of it. I've not had to ask for permission. Didn't need to get sign off or approval of this. They're coming to me. So I shared earlier, build your table and invite others to sit with you. This is a great example of that. Sometimes we have to start small, grassroots, let others carry that message for us. That's when that ripple effect really begins. Now, this is not all of our programs. We've got a bunch of programs where we don't do this. I can't get people to sign up. Or if they do sign up, they don't show up. You have to figure out how your culture works. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice I could share with everyone today is I'm sharing with you what's working for me generally. This is in my culture. This is in my context. Context is king. We tend to look at LinkedIn, we go to these conferences and we see how all these other people are winning and we see all their Instagram moments. They get up there and they talk about, oh, I had this program and I did this, this, and this, and it was amazing. Everybody loved us, got investments. And I sit back and I think, that never worked for me like that. And I don't feel good about myself, which is why I feel like we have to talk about these messy, grittier moments of failure, of the struggle, because what we do is hard. It is hard. I'm sitting here telling you today some of the Instagram moments, but I struggle most every day. I have my doctorate, I have other degrees, I have books. I'm still treated like an order taker.
Mm.
And it depends on the context. Is this new stakeholder new? Is it a new project? Am I joining a new company? It's like a pendulum. It swings back and forth all the time. And I equate it to this. If you're a doctor or a nurse or a dentist, you will never wake up in the morning and think, oh, I hope there's no problems to solve today. I hope there's no difficult patients to deal with. That's just part of their job. Every day they're dealing with problems and struggling patients and patients that want to give them orders who've gone to ChatGPT and have self-diagnosed. And the doctor's like, no, let me tell you how this really is. They deal with this. That's their profession. This is also our profession. We're going to always have naysayers. We're going to always have problems. We're going to always have stakeholders who may not want us to win. Maybe they've had bad experiences with training or with learning and development. That's just part of what we do. So we have to accept that in that foundation. Cheryl, that to go back to your question, which is have others help be our voice. And one tactical way that you can do that is creating a learning community. Doesn't cost a thing. What you do is you and your team identify 5 friends of learning. You know who they are. We know who the people are that don't like us. But what about the people that do like us? Each person on your team, pick 5 of those. Then you have your lead, whoever your leader is, CLO, whatnot, send an email to them and say, hey, team, we are starting a learning community. We'd love for you to meet with us once a quarter. And here's the beautiful thing. You don't have to do anything. It's a virtual call. You show up. We want to learn from you. We want to hear your voice. In that meeting, let's say it's an hour virtual call, the first 3 or 4 minutes, you talk about what you launched the last quarter, because probably our emails went to spam or just nobody reads them. So it's an opportunity for us to refresh these people. Hey, here's what we launched, so you know what's out there. Then you spend the next 5 minutes talking about here's what we're going to launch in the next quarter, planting those seeds. And then for the rest of the time, this is what you do. You just listen. You are there to listen to them. You're building relationships with them. You ask them at the beginning some basic questions like, what was your best learning experience that you've had at this organization? What was your favorite learning program? Then you get a little bit more detailed. What do you need that we're not currently offering? And this is one of the most important questions, but also one of the least used questions. When you ask that question, you're going to uncover needs that you may not have known existed. Maybe you validate, maybe you find out they don't need anything. I've not seen that yet, but you still done to be corrected. I always find there's something else that they need that we haven't thought about. And then you get with a bigger question, what's the biggest hurdle? What's the biggest rock that you have at work right now? Not a learning and development question, but just in general, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing? You're building relationships. You're uncovering opportunities for learning. You're planting seeds about programs that have launched already or are going to be launched. These become your advocates, your ambassadors. You've now built a relationship with this group. You meet on a quarterly basis. What's beautiful about this is that when you have a new program idea, a pilot, a prototype, and you need a group of people to give you feedback, you now have a group of people that you can reach out to individually to get this feedback. This is an example of building your own table and inviting people to come and sit with you. The output of this type of meeting is amazing because you have so much rich data now. You will leave, if you ask the right questions, you will leave with more insights than your business partners do. So then what you do is you take the data that you've uncovered anonymously. I do not share any names with my stakeholders from this. And I use GenAI to analyze the needs, the gaps, the business problems. And then I filter it and sort it by business unit, service line. And then I reach out to my stakeholder proactively. I say, hey, we'd love to meet with you for 25 minutes and share with you some insights that I've uncovered about your service line, my table, inviting the stakeholder to come and sit with me. In the meeting, I share, hey, we've started this new learning community. I wanted to share there are 3 insights that I uncovered about your service line. Now, 2 of these we can't solve. They have nothing to do with learning and development, but I wanted to bring it to you to make sure that you're aware the frontline workers are struggling with this. But here's a couple of ideas of how you might be able to solve this. And by the way, you're not the only business unit that has this problem. Another business unit does it as well. So you may want to connect with them. I did some research. I want to share that research with you. Just some things for you to think about. But these 2 things are happening and they're a big problem right now. This third, learning can help. So let me tell you about it. Would you like us to work on a solution to help solve this? Most of the stakeholders, at least the first meeting, sit back and they're like, what? How did you uncover this? Again, we started a learning community and we're going to be doing this on a reoccurring basis. So this is a value add that we're going to bring to you to help bring insights about your service line. Boom. Order taker, trusted learning advisor, strategic business partner. I've just given you multiple examples of building your own table and inviting others to sit with you. You are in control. You are controlling the narrative. You're controlling who is there, what's discussed, and then you've got all this rich data that you can consistently use moving forward. So sorry, long story short.
I loved it. I didn't want it to stop, and I think we should, if you were up for it later in the year, do a part 2 of this because there were such rich examples there. You talked about sowing seeds, friends of learning, again, getting more and more comfortable of creating our own table. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your deep, thoughtful, reflective, practical responses to some of the conversation that we were having. So thank you so much. We're going to open it up to some Q&A for 5 minutes, and then we're going to do a quick draw, a random draw to help 3 lucky people win the free copies of the books. The books have been sponsored by Manager Kind, who are also into helping with communication skills for emerging leaders, one of which is storytelling. So no surprise that they were really keen on sponsoring the books. I'm going to go through the chat, so feel free to put your questions in the chat or come off mute. But I think there was an awesome one from Suzanne. Suzanne, do you wanna ask it? Feel free to come off mute if you like.
I'm in my yard, so just in case a car drives by or children start yelling, nature. So yeah, I've heard a lot of good names and words for what we do, and if you go on LinkedIn, the job ads and the requirements in
Hundreds.
it's
Job
a mess.
titles.
Yeah. And so I'm just curious, your experience, but also other people in the community, what are the titles and the role names and the things that we're calling ourselves that seem to best identify our value?
This is one of the biggest conundrums for our industry, and I'll answer it 2 ways. So I shared earlier that I don't really consider myself learning and development. If I were giving a 5-year prediction or maybe 10-year prediction, I think that we're going to be gradually moving away from learning and development as a functional title. You're now starting to see shifts of rebranding, renaming, actually some L&D within IT now from a data perspective. It could sit in HR. I share all this to say this is a challenge that we have got to solve, because if we limit ourselves to training or L&D, and we're talking about this is the evolution away from that, then people get on that fear track of I'm not going to have a job. If you flip the mindset from I'm a problem solver, we are all problem solvers. That's what we're doing when we're developing learning and development solutions and developing talent. We're solving problems. There will always be problems to be solved in organizations. So that's why I don't fear about any evolution or transition away from L&D. But an example is ISDs, instructional designers. There's a shift moving away from traditional ISDs anymore from a job title perspective. So now it's thinking, how do I take my instructional design skills and think about it on a broader level. Well, instructional designer, the next evolution now is learning experience designer. People may not understand what that means, but that's when you're looking sort of an end-to-end solution for that learning experience. So before, during, and after. Long story short, I don't have an answer, except what I'm doing personally is rebranding us to talent development, because I think that that better encompasses what our team does. Learning and development feels like just a silo, but specifically for us, because the group was always called learning and development, there's a negative connotation to it. They think that all that group did was just create e-learning and compliance and regulatory. So it was either I could try and help you see that that's not what we could do, or I can rebrand us so that you see us from a different perspective. And I always find it's easier to rebrand than try to change people's perspective on what currently is. But I'd love to hear, I think I see some chats coming in. Yeah, like learning strategist is one term. I think I did a quick analysis on LinkedIn, and there was maybe 45 different job titles that exist within L&D. And I still have people that ask me now, like, what do you do? And so my answer is I solve problems for humans with learning and development.
Love it.
Like, yeah, matrix organization. Well, how would you respond to that? Is that
For me, yeah, it's a good one. I mean, for me, it's hard because I also don't see myself as a learning professional, because I went then into growth and scaling up companies. So the way I have a one-line statement, which is partly what I said earlier, which is I help company grow or scale up, which is another cool phrase, through addressing operational challenges through learning solutions. And then what I tend to do on my the title, enablement, change management, business transformation, plus a 1 to 2 line description. And then when I present some of my slides or my options, because they're not used to seeing me in this way, I will have the learning solution, but then I'll have another slide, like, and I'll call it surprise, training plus one, you know? And the training plus one method tactic is really easy. Say, well, look, so once I got them on board with training, because that's what they want me to do, they don't want to hear at the start anything else because they just see me as training. Once I've got them on board with that, then then I will say, and I've got something else as well which you might be interested in. And the key is to not get too excitable because we can get quite excited as learning professionals. And my personality is quite excitable as well. So I say, if you're interested, and then they say, oh yeah, yeah, we'll be interested in that. So that's my technique.
Yeah, like someone put in the chat, if I can find it, I think it was Lee, was saying that the word learning can sometimes be what holds us up because, and this is 100% accurate. As I said earlier, not everything I do is learning
Yeah.
or training. It's problem solving, it's listening. And so when we put ourselves in this box that all we do is learning and development, it can be limiting. So someone said people development, talent development.
Absolutely. I
Good
love it.
question.
What a rich conversation. And there is something deeper. It's obviously more than words, and our words are important, as we know, whether that's copywriting and linguistics and what that means. But I think it is often deeper and sowing the seeds, as you were saying, Keith. Right, we've got a few minutes left. I'd love to do the lucky draw. Unless there's any other question, please feel free to put it in the chat, but I don't want to miss the opportunity. So what I've done, using GPT, I took a screenshot of everyone's names and then asked GPT to create me a list and number them. So we've got now. I did this a bit early on, so apologies for those who joined late. I also feel like it's a bit fair, also those who were here from the beginning, potentially to be in with more of a chance at getting the free copy. So I had at the time a 28 names. So we've got. So what Keith? I'm going to ask Keith to pick a number or three numbers between 1 and 28, and those numbers correspond to a name of a person on this call, and we'll basically give you a free copy of Keith's book, which will be paid for you. So let's start the lucky draw. Are you good, Keith? Do you want to choose your
Yeah,
first number between
I'm
1 and
good.
28?
Let's just go with number one.
Oh, great. So that is Talvi. Did I pronounce your name right? Congratulations.
They
Awesome.
have to be here. They have to be here.
They have to be here. There's
Yes.
one Lila
Yes.
who
Talvi's
jumped off.
here.
Ah, great. So Talvi's here, which is fantastic.
Perfect. Congratulations, Talvi. Next one would be 16.
16. We've got Lee Hessin. Do we have Lee Hessin here? Yes.
Yep.
In the chat.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Also, the final one, Keith. The drum roll,
Last
please.
one is 21.
21. Let me scroll down. That's Laurie Anderson. Do we have Laurie here? Ah, Laurie.
Lori, congratulations.
Awesome. Well, the great news is that I've got all your emails. I'm going to reach out to you. The best way to get the book to you. We were thinking you can get it on Amazon. So we were thinking probably just a voucher that we'll send across to you. And then you can, that way you can control the delivery address, basically, because we don't want to ask you for any personal data and ship it out to you. Plus, it will save on logistics and shipping costs. That was a bit of fun, a bit too quick. I would have loved to have done that a bit longer. But thanks so much, Keith, for sparking so many rich debates. I knew it was going to be great, but this surpassed all expectations. So I'm really grateful to you.
Thank you for having me. I just want to leave you with one final thought. So I keep this, I don't know if you can see it. Let me just check my,
Yeah.
you see it? So I keep this next to my computer all the time to remind me of our higher purpose. So that when things do get frustrating, as I said, they do still get frustrating for me, learning changes lives. That's what we do. That's why we exist. That's our higher purpose, our ultimate value contribution. So regardless of your job title, whether you're an instructional designer, a project manager, a trainer, a learning admin, a learning coordinator, you are part of that bigger ecosystem that is leading to the development of our talent, which is ultimately changing their lives. So when the going gets tough, and it does, keep that in the back of your mind, please.
What a great phrase. What a great note to end a perfect session. Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank
time,
you.
everyone. Great rest of the day. Take care.
If you've read the book, leave a review on Amazon so others can find it.
Go get your copy. Available at all
Perfect.
your local online stores as well.
All right, take care.
Take care, everyone.